and begin with the question of where to begin. That is, how to get people galvanized, how to get them started, and how to excite them without it being so virtual, without it being so, to some extent, maybe even unreal.
Well, first of all...
Microphone.
Can you all hear me? Yes. First of all, what is exciting about the people here is that they're already committed. So this is not a question of exciting them, it's a question of how to increase the effectiveness of what everybody's doing. So it's a different issue that people who come to the boot camp are dealing with. And how to accelerate and leverage what we're doing. Because we talked this morning about getting to critical mass. At which point what people are doing here can also become something that is part of everyday reality for millions of Americans. And that's really the moment now, and I think that we are at that moment. It's a combination of the economic crisis, which has meant that the problems are much more acute, and also that there are millions of very skilled people unemployed, who at the same time as they're looking for another job, can contribute a lot of their skills to making life better for other people, at the same time that they are reevaluating what matters in their lives. So the issue of volunteering and service is not just doing good in the community, it's also asking the big questions. What is our life about? Is it about consumption? Is it about success? Or is it about also giving back and contributing and building community? So these are the big questions that we all need to address. And then the question that you asked is how do you bring people who are not already committed to this beyond Thanksgiving and 9/11 and the big events that galvanize people.
John and Greenblatt, let me go to you, because they're being asked, young people, to do a lot of things and finding it difficult to decide where their priorities are to be, kind of triage almost. Again, the question comes down to how do you get them excited, how do you get them involved, and what do you do to really enhance that for us?
Well, it's an interesting question about how do you get young people involved, because from my point of view, young people are more involved today than ever before. So I think what's interesting is, and Craig may be able to build upon this, you see young people activating in lots of ways today, through the causes they get involved with, through the products that they buy, through the media they consume. But again and again, in my experience all over the country, the number one question that I often get from young people is, now what? I bought your Ethos water, I read your good magazine, I'm doing Facebook causes, now what? So I think what we need to do is to create the opportunities to leverage the incredible talent and potential of all the people in this room and all the young people around the country.
Rich Harwood, there's a good deal of compassion fatigue, as you well know. What do you do about convincing people, maybe on a almost vending level, that is really persuading them that it's important to do good, that it's vital, necessary?
I don't think actually we should try to persuade them to do good. I think what we should be doing is, I think the number one reason why people decide not to come into public life is because they no longer feel their reality is reflected. They can't see themselves, they can't hear themselves, they don't believe their experiences are reflected in what people are saying. That's not a persuasion challenge, that's an authenticity challenge. It's a challenge about whether or not we will frame issues in ways that are meaningful to people, whether or not we'll create spaces where people can come together and engage in real conversations, not the kind of false conversations we see over and over again. It's about whether or not we will create real pathways for people to take actions on their aspirations, as opposed to trying to railroad them into volunteer systems that really aren't related to the community, but are related to the organizations that are sponsoring those opportunities. I think these are fundamental choices each of us in this room have to make if we want to marshal the resources and the public will to act on the real kinds of public challenges that we face in society today.
Craig Newmark, talk a little bit about new technologies in this vein that we're talking about, how it begins to spread the means and get things going in a greater sense.
Well, people are using social media, Facebook and Twitter in particular, to spread the idea that this is what people are doing now. I guess we're borrowing from the behavioral economists, the people who talk about us nudging each other into better and better, more helpful behavior for someone. Tangentially, by the way, I should mention that speaking as a nerd, for me to be addressing this issue is a crime against nature. Nevertheless,
It's a lot of mileage out of this nerd thing.
yeah. Nevertheless, as John Hodgman pointed out a couple nights ago, the Obama administration is our first nerd presidency. And I am calling him out for stealing my material. But the deal is that we need to build an expectation that we are in this together, that there's stuff that we can do together to help each other out, to give each other a break. The technology is a big part of that because, you know, our species only survives by working together, by collaborating. And now we have this internet thing which allows face-to-face helping each other out to scale up into the millions. And in my fantasy life, into maybe 20 years into the billions. And the technology is the tool of that. Now, part of it again is creating an expectation that part of our normal everyday lives is helping each other out, nudging each other into doing that. And the way to do that is by showing how people are already doing it, by showing the heroism implicit in this. And in my case, one thing I'm doing is by showing the nobility of public service practiced by my fellow nerds in the administration, not at a high level, but the federal web managers, the people who are doing it every day. And as I've told them publicly, given that I don't place much value in dignity, folks live long and prosper.
You know that everybody knows that word bridge, are you sure?
Again, literally, the behavioral economists are saying that, you know, going out and trying to persuade people in a big way doesn't seem to work. But showing people every day in small ways that, hey, we gotta make it happen together, nudging people in that direction seems to be what works. And again, I'm showing too much Northeastern Jewish heritage in using that term, is what Michael is getting to, but that's the only word I have.
Well, speaking of words, let's take the word commitment, Amidar, and talk about, I mean, you've done some extraordinary things with Action Without Borders. I'd like to hear you on that subject about how to get people, I started out by asking how to get people more galvanized, how to get them more committed, really.
Oh my God, you're not even my girlfriend.
The social action we're talking about.
How do you get them more committed? I personally, there's something I think about the word service actually, and I'll say this pretty honestly. I think service and serve to me are sort of pretty sort of downer words. I think people want to actually change the world. People want to be involved in a variety of ways. I mean, what's happening in Iran today, for example, has been happening this whole week. I think it's been pretty glorious, and I don't think that's service, and yet it's pretty inspiring. And so I think that one way to get people committed or involved is that I think in some cases we should find better words that really speak to what people want to do, which is more than just serve. I think people want more than that. So anyway, that would be just my small contribution there. I think we need to find words that encompass this thing that we feel in our heart, that goes beyond the idea of service of the piece, so that I think we can go way beyond that.
You have some thoughts about how you get to the heart, so to speak?
Oh my God, now it's getting really romantic. Maybe later.
We're in San Francisco, so it's okay. Shirley, let me go to you. You've dealt a lot with strategy. How do you see strategy in terms of, again, getting people more involved, getting them more committed, getting them more mobilized, getting more mindful of the community and how valuable it is?
You know, it's interesting, because I've spent a lot of time in government and a lot of time out of government, and I think we're at a point right now where I have never seen such infusion of interest in getting involved. And I like what Ron said about it's not service. People are passionate about causes. And I spent a lot of time in sort of the small service box of the federal government, as it were, and that's really important because part of taking advantage of all this interest is having enough of a infrastructure to kind of point people to being able to actually make a difference. And it's really hard. What I think is very exciting about the time we're in now is this notion of being able to self-organize with the tools that we have. And the challenge for the organization is to not become irrelevant when you have all these folks kind of running around self-organizing. Well, be the leaders. Figure out what they can do that's going to transform your issue. And show them how you get what they make a difference. And that's what's going to keep people coming back. The experience of having an impact on something call to service may get their attention, but it's not going to keep them moving.
But you're saying take a leadership role and really assume that kind of role.
I think that we have to, you know, as nonprofit organizations, we can't just step aside and say, well, government's going to do it, or business is going to do it, or ordinary people are going to figure out how to solve poverty on their own. But everyone can do something, and any organization that's not thinking really hard about how they can step out there and engage people in interesting and, you know, meaningful ways is going to miss this, you know, huge boat.
Steve, Wright, let me ask you, I just recently gave a talk to a bunch of NGOs, and I said, if you really want to get the word out in terms of what you're doing, you have to market, you have to really then sell, right? Talk about that from your perspective. I mean, you've been working in sales all these years, in the nonprofit sector. How much really, and what kind of strategies are involved in terms of marketing and selling?
Sure. You know, I'm hoping for the day when marketing becomes synonymous with truth telling.
Wherever they call you an idealist, the utopianist, maybe.
I mean, ultimately, that's really where we have to be, especially in the social sector. I mean, who's solving poverty? Who's dealing with homelessness? Who's doing education, disease? That's us, right? And we keep borrowing the skill sets of the corporate sector. And I think maybe we need to figure out how we can have the same amount of rigor around how we measure ourselves so that we have as much real value to alleviating poverty as a corporation has real value relative to the amount of revenue they can earn. Because there is real value talking the work that we do. We don't know yet how to expose that, how to make it resonant across ourselves. I think it has something to do with competition, and I think it has something to do with collaboration.
That's a key question. I'd love to hear anybody jump in here on the notion of how you increase the sense of value, how you provide a catalyst, a real catalyst of value. Anybody, just feel free. I mean, you look like you're going to say something. No, you're still romantic. Arianna?
Well, I think one of the ways that we need to increase the sense of value is to tell the stories, you know, to become storytellers around what's happening. There are amazing stories, you know, what people are doing, you know, the inventiveness, the ingenuity that people bring to giving. But we don't hear about them in a consistent way, you know, day in, day out. And that's really what we now have the opportunity to do because of the 24/7 nature of new media and social media. And certainly, I was saying this morning that, you know, I definitely have devoted an entire section of the Huffington Post to that, the living section. And the idea is to keep expanding that and getting all the stories there all the time so people know, and there are many other sites, you know, I'm just mentioning what I'm doing, but there need to be hundreds of sites so people know they can go and have all those stories there that inspire them, that teach them, and where they can tell their own story. And that is incredibly infectious. I mean, I know every time I read about something that is unusual, out of the way, interesting, I mean, my favorite story is what people with skills who are out of work are doing to help others, you know, prevent foreclosures, provide medical help. And that is to me incredibly powerful because it deals with a real problem that we are all facing right now and provides real solutions.
Rich, you want to pick up on this?
Yeah, one is just to pick up on the notion of stories and to connect it to what Steve was saying. I think there are ways in which we believe we have to tell stories, which are rooted in a kind of exaggerated marketing, PR approach, which I have to say I don't think people see themselves in. And then I think there are the kinds of stories that Arianna is talking about, which I think of as almost civic parables. And, you know, parables have a certain kind of quality to them. You're off on a journey, you're trying to achieve things. Typically in a parable, you fell down somewhere along the way, you had to pick yourself up. The insight was in how you picked yourself up and why you picked yourself up. You sort of took a circuitous route, which is sort of like the 23rd Psalm for those of you who are religious, which is that you never went in a direct way, you went in a circuitous way. And when you arrived someplace, oftentimes in parables, you didn't arrive at the destination you first sought to go after. You arrived at a different destination, which actually holds greater meaning for you. And it holds greater meaning because of what we learned along the way. The last thing about parables is they never have an ending. I don't know if you've noticed this. They tend not to have an ending. And much of the work, like Shirley was mentioning, poverty, there is no ending. It's vigilance. It's going to take one generation after another. We've got to keep at it. These are seemingly intractable problems that need our attention. We have to bring different kinds of resources to them, different combinations of resources, different assets to them. We have to be willing to think differently about them. And I think if we start to tell ourselves different parables about the things that we've done, it will unleash our potential to be willing to be brave enough actually to take these issues on.
Jonathan, I think you want to come in here.
Yeah, I deeply agree with both of these points. I think the idea of parables is a marvelous construct, and as Arianna is saying, it's about telling stories. What's interesting about this moment in time is those stories aren't going to be told top down. They're going to be told bottom up. And I think so much of the innovation is happening out there at a grassroots level. I think many of you here in the audience today could tell us stories. And I think you're seeing trends, and this is really where technology comes into play, to empower all of you. So we mentioned things like Twitter and Facebook up here on the stage today. There are lots of nonprofits that are innovating, putting their ideas out there in a very open source manner. I would highlight one, because I know he's here, Daryl Hammond from Kaboom. Kaboom, which is a marvelous organization that builds playgrounds and play spaces, has put all of their stuff on the web. So all of you can be involved in determining how to build play spaces that work for your community. Again, it's not top down, it's bottom up. And we've just launched allforgood.org, which is aggregating data from some marvelous nonprofits and aggregators like Idealist, Craigslist, and others, and putting the API out there. So any of you can make All for Good your own and enhance your own websites, Facebook pages, etc. But the point here is that this revolution, maybe like the one on the other side of the globe, is not going to happen top down, it's going to happen bottom up. It's probably happening right now. And hopefully you guys who are here today are going to take back the insights and the tools, and again, keep fomenting revolution and driving change in your own communities.
Amit, you have something to say now?
Do I have anything to say? Well, I'll say actually one thing, which is coming from Idealist, is maybe counterintuitive, but I actually think that the technology is really important, but it's really about the people. I think we, especially this year, last few years, I think are falling into a trap now, overemphasizing technology. You know, the Romans built the Roman Empire without Facebook. Oh my God, they got it done. And people have done some amazing stuff in the last 2,000 or 3,000 years. Without the stuff, people are amazing. Technology is useful. In fact, sometimes in my sort of bad days now, I think that technology is actually making us less smart, less ingenious. I mean, think about it. If you had to run, if you had to run a big hotel or a big airport 50 years ago without a computer, you have to be really ingenious. Today you can be sort of dumb and lazy and still get it done. So actually, I think I'm not sure technology is the answer. I think we are the answer. You are the answer. Obviously, technology is a nice tool. It's still up to all of us to actually get it done, which I think is trite.
Steve, you're putting the microphone up toward your mouth.
Yeah, so I think I very much agree with that. And one of the concepts I've been running around in my head is in this era of social networking. It feels like we are still focusing on the node as opposed to the network, right? And the power of social networking to me are the lines in between the people, right? That's where the value is. It's in the relationship, not in the individuals. And even when I hear Facebook themselves talk, or Salesforce.com marketing department, whoever it is, it's push, right? But what I don't think, the problem we haven't figured out yet, and that I'm hoping that technology will help us with, is how do we discover value? And in particular, how do we discover aggregate value? It's not about catalyzing new people to do new things. I think it's more about discovering who's doing what, how close are they, and how do we make them feel better, or be better at it, to get back to Arianna's initial point.
Shirley, Sagawa.
So I think this idea of discovering the value between people and the networks is absolutely essential for organizations. And we just, my co-author Deb Jospin and I wrote a book called The Charismatic Organization that's essentially about the value of social capital to unlocking every other kind of capital that an organization needs. So again, we go back to the theme of, even though everybody can be socially networked and self-organized and do everything on their own, there is a huge value in having organizations that can, play that leadership role. But if you're only out there looking for the next funder or the next, board member, you're missing the opportunity to build this amazing network that's going to give you a path to almost anybody you need to be successful.
Craig, I want to go to you.
Well, the question from my point of view is how do we make everyone realize we're all part of something much bigger than ourselves? And I'm still learning. Recently someone mentioned the early use of social networking technology. This guy, Paul, made use of this kind of technology called epistles, letters, which is spread through an early network. And that was very effective in terms of spreading an early form of this message of people actually working together. And that network has proven remarkably durable. Some issues. Part of my sense of humor, by the way, is I like to say things which are serious, but may sound like a joke, but they're serious. And Facebook let's say, represents the current form of the evolution of this technology. Blogs also, Twitter also, but again, how do you make use of these technologies to get people to catch on that we are part of something bigger?
How do you build community, really, especially with the kind of social networks we're talking about, which don't necessarily allow for the face-to-face contact that sometimes really enhances connectedness, human connectedness? I mean, that is one of the paradoxes that we're dealing with. If anybody wants to jump in here and address that, it seems to me it's a major kind of one. I remember talking to Stuart Graham, the founder of the Whole Earth Catalog, about this whole phenomenon, how people flame on the internet, and how easy it is to flame, as opposed to, doing it face-to-face. It's a real phenomenon, and it has to do with that kind of distance that exists because of the internet. Correct?
The only way I know how to do it is the way I did it, starting by an accident on my part, although it's much more serious now that this guy Jim Butler is running it. But the deal is you provide a platform which matches the way people really behave and want to work together. In our case, Craigslist is kind of a flea market. Because in real life, a flea market is a marketplace where people come to go and socialize, as well as do commerce. This is not new. The Romans did it, calling it the forum. In the Mideast, it's called a souk. In the U.S., it's often called a shopping mall. But you get people together to do what they want to do, to get to do their stuff, and people will build community themselves that way. And Facebook, I think, is another twist on that, as is Twitter or LinkedIn. You get people, you provide people with a good platform, and then, to the extent possible, get out of the way, and then people will self-organize. Doesn't work every time, but people, if you build the right platform, somehow that happens. And I'm hoping that All for Good is another platform along those lines.
That's why I started off talking about the birthday party, though, because in many ways you have virtual communities. This is all Howard Reinkel goes way back, right? You have virtual communities and you don't have that kind of interpersonal connectedness, and people stay at their screens, and you have to get them out there to build community, don't you? I mean, is that really what you're saying, Arianna?
Yes, but what Craig described is really how do people want to spend their time. I think part of what we need to do is reevaluate what is fun. Why is it fun to spend endless hours shopping in a mall? I mean, I find it completely exhausting. And maybe right now, when people don't have as much money to spend in a mall, and when we have this huge, what I call cognitive surplus, that suddenly people now have time in their hands. I don't mean just because they're laid off, but even before that, more time in their hands because of the Industrial Revolution, and many people have spent it in front of a TV, or in ways which were assumed to be how people want to relax. But people have spent it on Wikipedia. 1 billion hours have been donated to Wikipedia. So we really need to sort of understand more deeply what is it that makes people interested, enjoying their lives, and that the conventional ways that we thought meant enjoyment, fun, whatever, are not necessarily what people enjoy, so that they think that that's how you're supposed to have fun.
Shirley?
Having fun. Do, sir. I think it's interesting to look at the younger generation now who have sort of defined themselves in ways that, all positive causes. We're looking at, AmeriCorps applications have tripled this year. And, that's people coming forward saying, I want to spend a year of my life trying to help others. And they aren't going to do it just because of that. They're also going to benefit from it. And I think that we've now got this wonderful balance between it's good for me and it's good for the community. Whereas, I remember I was a Reagan kid when I got, not a Reagan kid, but I was a Reagan generation. Graduated from college at a time when everybody was getting those pinstripe suits and the big schoolyard ties, and you had to decide, are you going to go get that corporate job, or are you going to be, some kind of, teacher do-gooder? And it was a real choice. And nowadays, we can do both. We can be Jospin Greenblatt. I mean, it's awesome. We can be any number of these folks here who are doing good and having fun at the same time.
That's the key, though, I think, isn't it? Doing something for yourself and for others.
Yeah, and I think, fundamentally, to Arianna's point, I think that people want to do stuff. It's interesting living in New York and watching, two sort of New York shows. I think Seinfeld and Friends, right? You've all watched those shows, I think. And why are these shows so popular? I think you have a community, you have a friendship. In fact, in real life, people don't barge in each other's apartments. Seinfeld. They don't hang out every night as friends. But what's so fascinating is that if you watch Seinfeld, you will never watch, Seinfeld and Elaine and Kramer sitting in their living room watching Friends. How boring it would be to see them watching television. Well, then why are we doing that? They're out doing stuff. We're home watching them and not watching them.
I'm sorry, I put my cultural critic hat on. One of the biggest criticisms of Seinfeld was that last episode written by Larry David when they decided to do nothing. Remember, to help them. And there was a good deal of criticism and a good deal of concern about that.
They do stuff together. And I think that's where the technology, is okay as far as it goes, if it also brings us together, which I think is people, you can be on screen all day long. In the end, people actually still want to touch and smell and listen to other human beings and other whatever, and not just be online. That goes far enough, but then people I think want more than that.
Yeah, Steve, come on in. Some thoughts?
Yeah, to me again, it comes back to this issue of so how many people in here work in homelessness? How about poverty alleviation? How about hunger? Right? And so what if you all know what each other does? You all know what you do best? Are there people next to you who do your work who are better than you? And could you stand to sit with them and know why? I think when I think about community, that's the context and that's the level of rigor, is how can you sit with next to somebody who executes against your passion maybe better than you do?
And learn in a symbiotic way from each other, right? That's what you're suggesting. That's what social networks can really help and provide. Jonathan, what's big?
Yeah, I think that we don't love technology for the sake of technology. I think technology is interesting in the way that it enables connections that otherwise aren't there. So many of us have you've probably read Bob Putnam's book about Bowling Alone, about the unraveling of community. And I think what's exciting about the way the net has changed that paradigm in fundamentally important ways. Nobody's right, it's all about the people. But technology enables people to connect in ways that was never before possible. How many of you have made microloans via Kiva? Raise your hands. Look at that. Keep your hands up. Look at that. So there's maybe a third of the audience, or a third of the audience has connected with some entrepreneur in Afghanistan, or some shopkeeper in sub-Saharan Africa, or some person who's never otherwise accessible to you. There are sites like Meetup, which are bringing communities, creating community in really marvelous, exciting, and rich ways. And even if you're just getting on Wikipedia and editing encyclopedia references, if you will, there are ways for you to connect with other people that were never before possible. I think that is something marvelous, and I think it's something that should be celebrated. It doesn't replace community, but bringing people together, I think, is a novel thing.
As long as the information is accurate. With Wikipedia, that's important. Actually, Arianna has a plane to catch, and you also have the 3 questions that came to us from Google. I think I handed it to you, and you may still have a copy, or if Adam's listening here, I need that copy. These are the questions that came from you that we're going to include here with. I don't think I got that back from you, but please thank Arianna Huffington for her involvement in this project. And Rich Harwood, you look like you're chomping at the bit here, so please, let's hear from you.
Well, I mean, point about that. For me, this is about people, first and foremost, and second, it's about impact. And that technology has, as Jonathan was saying, has afforded us opportunities that simply didn't exist before. I think one of the challenges, though, as we're taking advantage of those opportunities, is to remember that communities still need certain capacities on the ground. If, as Craig was saying, that people are going to move from technology back to face-to-face. And I think those are certain kinds of catalytic organizations that can incubate new ideas. It's healthy, robust networks. It's layers of leaders that hold credibility and trust in people. It's constructive norms. We're taking on tough issues because a lot of the issues that we need to confront in our communities are really hard to solve. And they're contentious and people simply don't agree about them. And so we're going to need to create those spaces where people can come together. So for me, the opportunity here is that we can engage many more people and also make the offline, the face-to-face work that much more meaningful and that much, give that much more potential.
Can somebody, maybe you, Craig, talk about this prompting to ask how these lines can be, the dots can be connected to a greater extent? That is, you know, you have people working in one area like homelessness, one area with poverty and everything. They can use and learn from each other symbiotically about different strategies. How can that be enhanced?
Haven't thought about that. The deal is with groups like this one to do things like just establish Facebook and Twitter groups where people throw ideas at each other. In a sense to socialize and even have fun together. And that way people know each other. And this is in a sense a relationship business. And hopefully some of that's happened here.
Can we ever talk about techniques, methods, strategies again, in terms of, again, making these lines less distinct, making causes less distinct, but bringing people together so they can enhance the strategies they use and the methods they use? Even with technologies, or new technologies, maybe on the horizons. Thoughts from any of you?
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of effort to create virtual spaces for powerful collaboration. Absolutely none of those replace human contact. However, they can allow you to continue to be in touch over time. You know, I work in the space of data management, operational infrastructures. I think in that space there are ways to talk about best practices, especially embedding best practices into your operational structures. And those are things that can be replicated as not just a PDF, which gets really hard to say, here's a best practice, read this and do that, right? But if we can start to actually share tactical operational infrastructure tools that across particular paradigms, so this is great for, you know, running a class in high school, this is great for managing a homeless program, those sorts of really tactical tools, beginning to share those using open source best practices, I think is a powerful way to make that happen. I think those kinds of tactical structures would be really helpful.
I think open source is a wonderful example because there's just so much that overlaps today in these classes. Shirley, please.
Yeah, I was just going to jump in because this idea that there are somehow best practices out there isn't quite right because we're always going to be finding something better. And when we kind of freeze in place, well, here's how we do this one thing, we stop innovation. And the whole point is we're always looking to find a better way. And so when you think about, you know, just look up the Wikipedia entries, constantly in flux, and people are adding things and debating, and you know, that kind of technology is in lots of other contexts. And that's how we should figure out what practices are working and we can learn from each other and start a conversation. It used to be like somebody on high would say, these are the best practices, and if government put money into it, they would codify that so you couldn't get anyone unless you did exactly what somebody did in 1968. We don't need to do that anymore, but it's very threatening to the established order.
One of the things that's most threatening now, since you use that word, of course, is the limited resources that people really, I hate to use the word, but fighting over, or vying at least, over what may be seen as the pie, pieces of the pie. I get some thoughts from some of your reflections on that, as you know, we're facing a more grim economy, we face the likelihood that people are going to be struggling more for a very limited number of resources, and they are already.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about competition, certainly within the non-profit world, is that it exists, but it's not spoken enough about. So in the for-profit world, everyone knows that Yahoo and Google compete, for example. And this is a long thing, we have to do it a long way now, but in the for-profit business world, the fact that people acknowledge competition actually, paradoxically, enables collaboration. Whereas in the non-profit world, the bad thing is not the competition, the bad thing is that no one talks about it. So in theory, you have these four organizations, they're all about peace, and they're all, whatever. And in fact, they compete viciously, but no one acknowledges it. And because no one acknowledges it, it's hard to talk about it, hard to do anything about it. So I think one word for me in this whole thing always has been the idea of conversation. I mean, at least acknowledge the fact, be direct. Acknowledge the fact you are competitors, and then you might even have to be able to do something about it and work together in some way. But the fact that it's below the surface makes it worse, and in some cases, even more vicious than if it was actually spoken and just acknowledged.
Maybe you want to say something about that potential for serious competition when you're trying to build community and build connection?
Competition will happen. The deal is that sometimes different people try to serve the same communities, the same people, and you may be doing it in different geographies, and at some point you may wind up colliding in some sense. I don't have a solution for that kind of thing. I've been lucky in that since the business model for my own little adventure is to be both a business and a community service. That's so odd that other people are not trying that. So frankly, first I got lucky, and then I got this gym guy who wrote things. And this enables me to, as I do half-time customer service now, this allows me I would like to say graceful retirement, but I don't intend to ever retire.
Rich?
It's funny, I think, I traveled around the country with the president of the Corporation for Public Broadcasting recently and talked to major public broadcasters about what would happen, this is before the economic downturn, what would happen if your budget was cut by 15%, and then what would happen if your budget was cut by 40%. And without missing a beat, everyone looked inward at their operations, tried to cut staff, tried to decide whether to give a tote bag versus a CD per pledge drive. And what we found over and over again, we've just released a study on this about organizations across the country. At the moment we actually need to turn outward toward communities, we're turning inward at ourselves. And we believe if we do yet another strategic plan, or rebrand ourselves again, or create more process, somehow or another that will make us more relevant and more essential, which is partly what I hear you asking. And I think this time offers us an opportunity to say, where are we most essential in the community, and where are we not? What do we need to protect as a core of what we do, and what we maybe think about triaging and getting rid of, and to build from our core as opposed to trying to cover the whole riverbank. So for me, in working with these public broadcasters, what I found is this has actually offered them an opportunity to be much more strategic, much more ruthless, and importantly, much more essential and relevant.
Shirley?
I agree with that. I mean, it's hard, but if you have this sort of fig leaf of having to make a hard choice because the economy, this is the time to get rid of that program that isn't really working with somebody on your board's life. It's that time to kind of get to fire that staff person who you feel sorry for, but would you rather have everybody else have to cut their time and productive people do less work, etc. It's the time to make those hard choices. And we do a lot of strategic planning with organizations, and the worst ones are when everybody kind of gets in the room and they make hard choices, and then it goes to the board, and the board adds back in everything that got cut because they really liked it. Well, now is the time that you can say to the board, it's going to go, it's got to go, or we're going to have to fire half the staff. So it could be a silver lining.
Yeah, I actually think it's certainly a time of great, it's like they say the best and worst of times. It's a time of great turmoil, but it's a time of remarkable promise. The venture capitalists down, on the peninsula would say this is a vintage year. Because great companies have been created in the trough of recession. You can go down the list Fortune 500s, or let's say some of the high flyers in the NASDAQ last 20, 25 years, businesses like Apple or like Intel that started again in the doldrums of recession. So for all of you who may be facing difficult times, to Shirley's point, it's an opportunity to make some of those hard decisions you may have been waiting on. For others of you who are entrepreneurs, as scary as it seems, you don't build share in crowded markets, you build share in open ones. And I think this is, for me, a moment of reflection and looking forward, and I think I have great faith in the ingenuity of people out here. You'll create new nonprofits, you'll create new for-profits, you'll create new hybrids. And those are the things that we'll look back on this time in 5 or 10 years and say, gosh, remember when?
I like the emphasis that you're talking about as far as challenges, and the challenges are even more legion, one might argue, in this kind of downturn economy. Say something, because all of you are really quite experienced in terms of working in a nonprofit and doing good, about how you channel your resources in terms of knowing when to do the things that serve the public and when to do the things that serve you. Sometimes they do, obviously, not connect. Can you get some wisdom from
you? You as a person or you, the organization?
I'm talking about both personal and professional, personal and political. Let me go ahead.
I think with us, I think honestly, it's always been, I actually agree with Google's point of view here, that if you just constantly focus on what's good for the user, and you think about what's good for the person that's using Idealist, then we'll be okay. That has been sort of and sometimes it's been hairy. The last 6 months have been really difficult. I mean, but we somehow go through this. But I think the sense that we just focus on what's best for the user, for the person using the site. You know, it's interesting. The software industry and the drug industry, the heroin, cocaine people, are the only ones that talk about users, ROI. But anyway, focusing on the people who use the site, then I think we'll be okay. I think in terms of personal time, I think that's really a personal decision for each person to do. We try to send our people home at 5 or 6 every night, and that's what we can do.
Anybody else want to say things on this score about portioning your time or finding a way to do it with more efficacy? Let me get a question then from the audience. With the influx of people wanting to work in community organizing, what credentials should seasoned nonprofit professionals highlight to maintain their current positions or gain a new one? Don't everybody jump in all at once here. With the influx of people waiting to work in community organizing, what credentials should seasoned nonprofit professionals highlight to maintain their current positions or gain a new one?
That's a great question, and almost by the way it's phrased, it makes me think you're going to have a challenge, because if you're not looking ahead, what's the next way to do things? What opportunities are out there presented by technology and this influx of people who want to help? If you're not being opportunity focused, then you better watch out. Somebody who is going to be right behind you. So I'm not sure I have a lot of advice except for listen to what all these folks are saying and be mindful of that, because you'll be more effective and then you won't have to worry about that new guy.
Anybody else want to jump in here? I'll go on to another question then. What do you consider the most important issue facing nonprofits in the coming 12 months, and is there one area you would consider most important to focus on?
Well, I think I've become downright annoying with this response, but it's a collaboration for me. And so, the health of your organization, or the strength and resilience of your organization will have to do with how you can compete in however you define your marketplace. But your ability to move the needle to solve a problem will have to do with your ability to collaborate. And I don't think we really know how to collaborate. I think maybe even collaborate is almost the wrong term, because it puts too much of the onus on the individual organization. I think it's more about aggregate. So how do we know if we are all doing well together? We should have an opportunity, right? It should be a good thing that we're willing to share, that we have a common goal. Right? In the corporate sector, it's really that they're just each trying to move their own needle. Right? For us, we actually have the